Welcome to episode 84 of the Breaking Balls podcast. Bob, there's a little bit of Kyle Larson in all of us because things just did not go right for race fans today. From a snooze fest in Monaco to the rain delay at Indy, and then finally the Coca Cola somewhere less than 600. I don't know. I'm so frustrated at this point. Here we are.
I'm barely holding on by a thread tonight on Sunday night. I just feel depressed and I feel like Mother Nature's going to rain another cloud on me. But anyway, here's Breaking Balls.
Flags in the air. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys.
No, folks, our dogs are not dead. We are just broken from Memorial Day weekend and, well, the rain delays all across the country in motorsports. Welcome to Breaking Balls. It's episode 84. Bob and Adam here once more. And happy racing Sunday, I guess.
Yeah, who would have thought Memorial Day would be the least depressing part of this day for us, to be honest with you. I mean, this was bad from morning to noon to night. You look forward to something all week, and it's frustrating, Bob. As a race fan, this is the one day you have circled on your calendar all year. And, I checked the weather last weekend, hoping, praying that the meteorologists were wrong, as they were for the majority of my childhood, but evidently they were very right all week. We knew it was coming and we couldn't stop it, and I don't know, man. This just feels awful. I feel like I'm in a depression.
We had such a potential for such a big day in North American motorsports, and then, as tradition, rain just comes in and washes out any chance of the double. It seems like historically that has always been the double's Achilles heel, is Mother Nature. And 2 weeks in a row for NASCAR where we're not really talking about the winner. Oh, by the way, Christopher Bell did win today, technically, in the Coke, what did you call it? 376, I think it is.
I think it's 373.5 to be exact, regretfully.
Yeah, not that we're very mathematical over here at Breaking Balls, but we did crunch the numbers. So the Coke 373, Christopher Bell does win. The big story, I think, is that you have the delay happen right around, I guess it's 8:30 Central Time, not somewhere around there. Obviously, this race is in Charlotte. Right as Kyle Larson is landing from Indianapolis. We'll get to the great Indy 500 coverage because that was the one part of the day that really is keeping me even somewhat energized today, because otherwise I'm down bad. I'm hurting. But yes, the rain hits right as Kyle Larson lands in Charlotte. And I guess the big story is just what could have been. But for race fans, you sit there for a couple hours watching the jet dryers go through, and NASCAR says we have intentions of running tonight if we can. Well, then they get to, it's about 10:30, 11:30 Central Eastern Time, depending on where you're at. And they go, okay, well, it's too humid out. The track's not dry like we want it to. We're going to go green probably around 1 a.m. if we're lucky. Well, you kind of knew that was going to happen if you'd done that in the first place. I guess I'm just confused at what they were thinking here.
I think basically, as it was described, there was the rainstorm that came in. They were able to get jet dryers on the track, and then evidently, I guess there was another storm or more rain that came in, and they basically just called it from there. But, I guess if, I'll try and keep it a little bit positive. I mean, at least Christopher Bell's headed in the right direction. I mean, definitely a team that they don't ask how, they ask how many. And they needed a win really badly. And ultimately, it's rain shortened, so there's a huge asterisk on it. But, it's no secret they have been struggling to even finish races, let alone get in top 10, top 5 victory lane. So I guess if there's one happy customer at the end of this race, it's Christopher Bell. But a lot of speculation on what could have been if this race were allowed to play out, Bob.
Yes, for sure, and I'm glad you mentioned Christopher Bell needing this win because he's definitely trended in the wrong direction in the last month or so. To get a stage win tonight, to win the overall race, to bank up some points in the playoffs moving forward, that's big for the 20 team. And the one thing that was notable to me, at least, was that every time I looked up in the top 5 for what we did get in the racing tonight, it was primarily Toyotas. It was Joe Gibbs, or you had Bubba Wallace in there. Tyler Reddick looked like he had a really fast car late once he battled through the pack after an early pit lane start. It looked like 2311 and Joe Gibbs were the class of the field, and Toyotas were dialed in. It looked like 4 or 5 of the top 6 for most of this race was Toyota.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I don't want to take you off track because you're 100% right, but at least we weren't the only ones left in the dark, because Christopher Bell said that he basically figured out he won the race because Mike Joy told him so. So I guess if we're going to take one bright spot out of the rain shortening, at least the drivers were as left in the dark as the fans, which I don't know what that says about the series, but yeah, no, Bob, you're 100% right. I think as I said last week, I think when handling really matters, the Toyotas tend to show up, and Charlotte in the next gen era has been all about moving around the racetrack, finding the different grooves, finding what's going to work, and evidently the Toyotas were making that happen, and that was reflective in the top 5. I mean, Denny Hamlin was the only guy you didn't mention who was up around the front of the pack the entire time. It seemed like Toyota was headed for a real banner day. Other than that, I mean, William Byron, I mean, it seems like any sort of big race, it seemed kind of like every week you have to factor in William Byron. And, it doesn't feel weird to say that because we're kind of used to saying it because he's in the 24 car, but evidently it looks like that tradition's going to continue.
He might have been in the 24 car, but shades of Dale Earnhardt with the pass in the grass tonight. That was the one big highlight we got tonight from Charlotte, was William Byron just sending it on the bottom there on the front stretch. It's turf now. It didn't look quite as good visually with Earnhardt going through the grass, all the dirt kicking up the way the turf does. But, the fact that Byron just had the gall to send it in there and made the pass work, not only on one, but 2 guys on the front stretch there. I mean, that was a heck of a move, Ad.
Oh, 100%. I do think it's hilarious that, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. The pass in the grass wasn't a pass. It was simply Dale Earnhardt going into the grass to keep his position. But nevertheless, this seems to be, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something that rhymes with turf. I don't know. At this point, I'm not even going to flex my muscle.
Easy Eminem. Easy Eminem. We'll just stick with the rain delay for now. Ad, you get Christopher Bell winning a stage. I think William Byron was the stage 1 winner as well. Brad Keselowski had some speed at times. It feels like Tyler Reddick was the one guy that really was the loser from this race getting shortened, because he's the guy, like I said earlier, he started on pit road in the race, so it was already at the back of the field, worked his way back through the field pretty quickly, and really showed that he was one of the Toyotas that was really fast all day. And the fact that I think he finished, what was it, 4th, I believe? I got to double check here. Yeah, 4th overall on the day. If we run those extra 200 laps, 150 laps, Tyler Reddick might be the one in victory lane.
I mean, it was evident that he had cars that were faster, if not just as fast as the leaders, because, when he was done serving that penalty and ended up having to come back, the leaders weren't able to catch him. I mean, it was pretty evident from the beginning of the race, from the moment that he was allowed to get up to speed and start, that car looked like a rocket ship. And, I think that's kind of the big what if for me, like you're saying. I think anybody who was watching the race you kind of leave wondering, like, okay, it wasn't if Tyler Reddick was going to be a factor in this race. It was just a matter of when. And ultimately, the rain comes. We have no idea what it was going to look like. But I think that's kind of what makes this the kick in the gut that, that we're feeling right now, is that it seemed like we were setting up for such a good finish, because it looked like there was a number of cars that could have been a factor there late.
And especially the fact that Charlotte is one of the best next-gen tracks we've got on the calendar. And you're only there one date now because the Roval has that playoff date. So this is your one shot. You get 600 miles at Charlotte every year. And the racing there for the first 2 years has been some of the best we've had in the entire next-gen history. And the fact that tonight you saw William Byron and some of that racing get a little more squirrely as we got closer to that rain kind of cell getting there. Again, I just feel like we were robbed of a historic day in America. All the eyes were on motorsports. There was so many people watching, partially because of Kyle Larson, partially because motorsports in America is on the rise. And it just, all the momentum just kind of got sucked away right there.
Yeah, it literally, it's almost like they were, watching a hot air balloon inflate, waiting for it to take off. And then the second that it got a foot off the ground, somebody just popped it. And whether it felt like that with just about every race except for Indy today. It just felt like very anticlimactic. And I think it's more disappointing because you heard the drivers talking about how the surface of Charlotte Motor Speedway, whatever is going on with it, how it's aging or whatever they're putting on it, it just seems to be producing great racing. And it almost makes I've got a pretty bad pit in my stomach right now, but the only bigger thing that could make this worse for me is thinking about how we're going to go back to Charlotte and not run on the oval. We're going to run this Roval just because of, the ghost of bad racing's past. We're going to run the Roval in the playoffs for some reason. And that hurts my heart.
Don't you worry, Ad. They came out today and said they reconfigured the Roval in a couple of turns. So there's going to be more passing and tougher braking zones. So it's going to be the new and improved Charlotte Roval. I'm 100% with you, though. You see the Kansas race a couple weeks ago, and we get that in the playoffs. We look forward to that. We could have Charlotte, and we could say, okay, we only got 360, 370 laps, however many it was, 370 miles today. But we're going to have that again in the fall. We're going to have another shot at this in NASCAR's backyard. No, instead you're going to the Roval. And again, I'm happy NASCAR tries different things, but it's just a shame when you've got one of their best tracks just not necessarily being misused, but the potential's not completely fulfilled there when you've got dynamite ready to go and instead you're using the Roval.
Exactly. I understand, any race fan who doesn't look at this honestly and say, okay, we ended up with the Roval for a good reason. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that's something that, we almost have to remember that we did end up going to the Roval because the racing, they wanted something different. They wanted to add another road course, and, lo and behold, the Roval was born. But we're just not at that place right now in the sport to where, we've got enough road courses. We do enough road racing. I really think that, especially given, as far as mile and a half being the bread and butter of NASCAR, I really think it's just very important that we run Charlotte, the oval, twice a year, because I could have seen way more. I don't even think 600 miles would have given me what I wanted to see out of this track. And it's just, it's so demoralizing. We barely got to see over half of it.
Well, and I think the biggest thing that I take away from what you just said is the mile and a half to the bread and butter in NASCAR right now. And you go back to when they introduced the Roval, the ovals, the cookie cutter ovals, more or less, those 1.5 mile ovals, were kind of the dull points in the NASCAR schedule. So it really is the NASCAR schedule is just always evolving and ever changing. It's never the same every year, especially with the next gen car. You've had a couple of different changes since then, but you have to be willing to be flexible and see, the first couple of years of the next gen car. And I think you're seeing that with, you're going from the Indy Roval to the Indy Oval. Maybe we can get Charlotte back on that next year too.
It's very weird because it almost feels like NASCAR, when they're planning their next moves, whether that's introducing the next gen car or, deciding whether to run the oval or the Roval or whatever, it just feels like they're setting up dominoes. And sometimes it's almost like there's one domino that falls and then the next one skips, so then they go and they just hit another one. It just feels like none of the changes are made in a way that makes sense. Like I think, the Roval change should have happened last off season. You should have looked at the racing at Charlotte and looked yourself in the mirror and said, hey, we designed this car to make the mile and a half better. Well, let's trust what we did. Let's trust the work that we did. Let's trust the research and put them on more mile and a halves. And it feels like we're still stuck in this weird in between to where we're going to run a bunch of different road courses and stuff like that. And, that was great for the old car because it did produce good racing, but we're not driving that car anymore. So I just think it's a little late. I hope they change it. It would make a lot more sense if they do change it, but it just feels like NASCAR is always constantly a step behind themselves. It feels very weird. I don't know if I'm, out of line saying that, but it just feels like they're just a step behind.
We're very positive on this podcast today. This is a fun one. This is a really good one. The mood is high. Let's get out of this let's get out of the Charlotte talk. Let's go back into the race results. Let's get back on here and just kind of look at the overall order here. Just, from what we did have to break down on this Charlotte 370, I guess we're going to call it here. But we talked about the Toyotas and their consistent speed here today. There was one team that did kind of jump out to me, though, and it wasn't on the Toyotas. It was on the Chevy side, and you had Ross Chastain in 8th. Suarez ended up in 24th, but I did notice for Stage 1 and Stage 2, most of the time, both Trackhouse cars were inside the top 10 there. It looked like they at least maybe took a little bit more of a step today. It was nice to see guys like that kind of making a little bit more progress. When we've been vocal on this podcast saying, seems like they might have lost a little bit of speed compared to last year.
Yeah, it's so funny because Daniel Suarez has won a race this year, and it just feels like Trackhouse is somehow regressing, and that's because maybe, I think we both kind of take the view that Trackhouse goes the way that Ross goes, and ultimately, I think today, had some success, definitely going in the right direction. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just good to see the more teams that can be competitive, the better off we're going to be. I think, the criticism now is, it's just going to be Hendrick versus JGR. But I mean, look at a guy like Brad Keselowski, who ended up second when this race was called and was having a really good day. And, RFK seems to be that snowball going downhill. They seem to keep having momentum. And I'm just, it's interesting to see, if we can get a few more of these teams like Trackhouse and RFK to show up consistently to the track and really compete. I think it's just rising tide lifts all ships, as we always say.
100%. And another name that jumps out at me really quick here in this top 10, because he's an outlier more than anything, you have his next best teammate in 25th with Chase Briscoe is Josh Berry, who finished 10th. A absolute banner day for Hendersonville, Tennessee. That was the one thing that was nice today, was Hendersonville's drivers did have a good performance this weekend. But Josh Berry rolls out in 10th there in a weekend and week where Stewart-Haas, and it's par for the course this season, but a lot of turmoil over there. It seems like the reports now is that the drivers are going to find out at least something about their future on Tuesday is kind of the word now. But you had Josh Berry run 10th there, and then the rest of his teammates 25th and under. I'm not sure what to make of old SHR anymore, but just another weekend where they're struggling.
Yep. A little bit of home cooking for Hendersonville, Tennessee from my podcast co-host here. So I know we're shocked to hear that, but yeah, I'm interested to hear what is going to come of the SHR saga that it has kind of turned into for the past few weeks. Has made for great content. If you haven't seen those videos that my co-host put out, it's been great. So by all means, you should go watch that video. But yeah, hopefully a little bit more clarity. I think the coolest thing is throughout this week, I think, with the drivers only broadcast of the Xfinity race and Josh Berry being on pit road, it was cool to see a little bit more of Josh Berry's personality. And then obviously they interviewed him in the rain delay. It just seems like a guy that we hear a lot about secondhand. So to kind of get him on the microphone to speak for himself a little bit and to show his personality, I thought that was a small victory for NASCAR this week because, like we always say, these drivers have to show their personality in order to get sponsorship, things like that. Josh Berry, obviously a guy who has really cut his teeth and, on short tracks and really is just kind of a guy who's looking for sponsorship, maybe looking for a seat, obviously, with everything going on. It just seems like a good time for him to get a little bit of publicity. And I liked it. I thought he did a great job all week.
Yeah, 100%. And a guy that has the unconventional background of getting that seat compared to a lot of the drivers. Obviously, his whole personal relationship with Dale Jr. has been noted, the iRacing background and how he's gotten this seat slowly just through seat time. And, he doesn't bring a lot of sponsorship to the table, but what he does bring is a lot of actual results. I mean, you think of last year when he filled in for Chase Elliott and finished second last year in a race. I believe it was Dover. But yeah, Josh Berry can get a result if he gets a couple of weeks in that car. You're seeing him start to get a little more comfortable. Gragson, who has had a lot of success the last few weeks, have that wreck out early, but Briscoe and Priest just weren't really factors today. Go ahead.
I'm glad we brought that up. Do we know what the heck happened with that wreck? Obviously, we saw some of the S&T data that kind of made it look like Ricky Stenhouse got into him.
It looks like when Gragson was coming off of the turn, I guess he wasn't clear and just it looked like it was a bang bang move where fenders hit, nose went into the wall, then recorrected, and he spun. They didn't really cover it after that, so it's a good point where it kind of got lost in the whole shuffle of tonight. But yeah, one of those guys where you had Josh Berry who said he's fighting for his cup seat next year, it feels like. Noah Gragson's another guy where the unlikeliest of results were you had a guy who looked like his career was completely done after a horrible spell with Legacy last year and comes in reinvigorated, and he's potentially a hot name now in the free agency market. Disappointing to see his results tonight, but overall, it's more of just the microcosm overall for Stuart Haas as a whole ad. But another guy, just to kind of quickly transition here, we have to give our flowers once this week. Justin Haley, 22nd. That's all. Nothing else. Just Justin Haley, 22nd. Round of applause. But more importantly, not more importantly, but just as important, Justin Allgaier ad. So he comes in for Kyle Larson, is the reserve driver. You're thinking, okay, he might have to run. And then it looks like, okay, he's definitely running. Larson's staying at Indy. And we're going to get to all that here in a minute. But Justin Allgaier is this whole forgotten story. Xfinity regular, has been in the NASCAR scene in the garage for a long time. Filled in for Jimmy Johnson, the Brickyard, and COVID. Had a quick wreck out. Didn't get another chance. And this is his moment finally again. And let me tell you, just got better and better as the night went on. And you could tell Cliff Daniels was genuinely proud of him today. I mean, what a night for Justin Allgaier.
100%. And, I think you hit the nail on the head. The genuine excitement in Cliff Daniels' voice for Justin Allgaier as he kept running. He was like, he just kept comparing him. He goes, look, Byron, I think he's like, Byron's running a 70. You're running a 30 right now. Like, the excitement of it all. And, you like to see guys like this get a chance and make the most of it. I think it was kind of a similar feeling that we had when Corey LaJoie stepped in and ran in Chase Elliott's car. We're like, finally, we're going to see what's going to happen. Except in this instance, Justin Allgaier was awesome, man. I mean, he had that car in the top 10, and then obviously, Kyle Larson, well documented, lands in the helicopter, gets in the golf cart and comes over. But to that point, it was kind of funny because as I was watching the golf cart go, I was like, shit, do they really want to take Justin Allgaier out of this car? Because he's putting together a heck of a run here.
Comes in P13 after the rain. But yeah, the fact that, like you said, Cliff Daniels was so excited for him, and Allgaier was even adamant. He was a team player about it the whole weekend where he said, if we go back green and Kyle's in the seat, I'm staying. I'm going to victory lane with him. He was full go with the whole experience. And you can have some moments there where the reserve driver just kind of feels like just a seat filler, more or less. And I know that's what he is, but is a nameless face. And for Justin Allgaier to have that respect and, to be in the garage for that long and to get another opportunity and to make the most of it. You heard him say, look, once Kyle gets in the seat, man, this is a rocket ship. He's going to fly to the front and no problem. And to see Justin Allgaier not only get better as the race went on, but to climb through the field against Cup regulars. It was great to see. But more importantly, I just keep coming back to it. This damn weather took away a what if. Because what if this rain delay happens as Kyle Larson lands from the sky, and then we have to sit Justin Allgaier, Kyle Larson jumps in the seat, and Kyle Larson goes out and wins in the last 300 miles. What happens?
Yeah, I honestly, it kind of felt like that's where we were headed. I mean, like I said, we mentioned Tyler Reddick, the Justin Allgaier, Kyle Larson tandem. There were so many guys who had an opportunity to maybe knock Christopher Bell off, and ultimately we just don't know because, Kyle Larson landed from Indy and brought the rain that delayed that race with him, and lo and behold, here we are.
Here we are. I guess it is true NASCAR brings the rain wherever they go, and it just was attached to Kyle Larson this weekend. But we might as well get into the whole double experience this weekend because that is ultimately the big story that was coming in, was Kyle Larson doing this 1,100-mile double with the Indy 500 and the Coke 600. And you said it earlier, Ad, we watched the weather all week, and we said, man, that does not look good. We ultimately did get all 500 miles in at Indy, but at what cost? We lost 4 hours. Kyle Larson had to basically lose his playoff eligibility for now. And it ended up being a great race, but it just was this whole scene of Kyle Larson doing the double. And instead of doing 1,100, he did only 500. It was just a normal weekend for Kyle Larson.
Yeah, pretty standard. So, yeah, I think, the one thing we'll start from the beginning here, because like you said, there's a lot of on-track racing and a lot of really cool stuff from this. But let's start, I like to keep the negativity rolling. Is there a more nightmare blunt scenario than Danica Patrick, Mike Tirico, and Jimmy Johnson. Is there a more nightmare of a rotation than that? Because I love the pre-race. I love everything they do, but oh my goodness, when I saw those three on my television together, I had no idea where we were headed. I'll say that much.
You know, lost in all this is Jimmy didn't get to do the double either. He was going to broadcast with NBC. I guess, did he just sneak out mid-race or before the race in the weather delay? I never caught what happened to Jimmy Johnson when he just ended up in Charlotte. There was no cameras on his double.
So what I gathered here is, you know, it's the 7-time Cup champion privilege. The same way that Richard Petty was able to just kind of slide out when there was a delay when he was supposed to give the command a few weeks ago, Jimmy Johnson just slid out. You just leave. It's kind of like the Irish goodbye that you get when you win 7 Cup championships, I guess. It's a privilege, not a right, but something you earn when you've got 7 Cup championships.
Listen, I respect it. I was just kind of confused. It kind of got lost in all of this. Where did Jimmy go? How did he get to Charlotte? Nobody was ever paying attention to that. But to kind of go back to Kyle Larson, I'm just left with that what if, because he's literally, the shot from Fox is his helicopter landing at the track, and as its feet from touching the ground, the yellow comes out for the weather. And I texted you and first go, oh, here's the conspiracy. They're gonna let they're gonna let Hendrick throw Kyle Larson in. There's not gonna be any delay, and there you go. They'll be easily jump right in, and he's gonna win the race. And then, unfortunately, the conspiracy was wrong. I wish it was right, but I was expecting Kyle Larson to jump down from the sky as the rain came down, part the seas like Moses, and say, okay, we're gonna get this next 300 miles in.
Yeah, but then Larry Mack decided to come in and correct what we thought was going to be a conspiracy. The ever truth teller, the beacon of truth in NASCAR, Larry Mack, kind of ripped our hearts out a little bit there. But I'm going to say it, not as badly as Kyle Larson ripped my heart out when he had got that speeding penalty today. I mean, it just seemed like we said earlier, the tension was building. He kept climbing through the field, had a tough restart, or had a tough start to the race, to be honest with you, and was really struggling with the restarts, but kept climbing because, that's just Kyle Larson. If you put him in a race car, he's going to find a way to wheel it towards the front. Got as close as 6th, and then obviously the one green flag stop he had to execute just couldn't make it happen. I mean, his comments, he even said, that one stung. It's going to sting for a while. He's really disappointed with himself, but ultimately, I think that does leave a little bit on the bone, a little bit, for him to come back next year and say, all right, learn from my mistakes. But my gosh, Bob, another what if of the day. What if Kyle Larson doesn't speed on pit road in the Indy 500?
Kyle Larson's teammates, Alex Rossi and Pato O'Ward, had so much speed at the end of the race that you're thinking, oh man, Larson would have had that speed too in his McLaren. But like you said, the one green flag stop was the Achilles heel. And it's just because you get a couple of practice shots like that opportunity on green flag stops, but it's nothing like the live race. And you get to see just how perfect you have to be to win the Indy 500. It's not just running clean laps and having track position. It's nailing every single part of that 500 laps. It's the pit stops. It's hitting your marks. Everything goes into it. And for someone like Kyle Larson, who is an absolute great wheelman, it just leaves him, like you said, hungry for more, disappointed about today. His goal wasn't just to do the double. It was to go out there and win. And that is just insane to think about. But then when you go back and actually watch the tape today, he ran clean laps, was able to make passes on the track outside of that early shift restart, like you said, where he got swallowed up pretty quickly and lost a few spots, and then that pit road speeding penalty. He ran a clean race and would have been up there in the top 5 to 6 for the contention today for the win. And you just got to think that's going to carry over to next year, right?
I mean, yes, 100%. I think as far as a first run at the Indy 500, first time in an Indy car for a live race, it doesn't get much better than what happened. I mean, obviously the mistake was what it was, but if you really remove that, it's a really good day for Kyle Larson, especially, like I said, your very first time in an Indy car, and you've shown yourself that you can run in the top 10. I mean, he was pretty consistently, even when he had that faux pas at the beginning with the restart and everything, or the start of the race, he never fell below the top 15. I mean, the talent is very clearly there. Newsflash, Kyle Larson's a heck of a driver, but ultimately, it just shows that this is not some far-fetched dream. I truly think that with a little bit more experience, maybe some more practice laps, maybe now with the better understanding of how the restarts go and how guys maneuver through that situation, I don't know. So long as the weather doesn't show up again, I think Kyle Larson has a pretty good opportunity at really making history.
And it just depends on what McLaren brings him next year, too. If it's the same kind of car like this year, he's definitely going to be in contention if Hendrick lets him run again. And the other big thing for me today is that and maybe I'm just looking at it from the rose-colored glasses because we've been so negative today, but I feel like we might be slowly seeing Kyle Larson take that next step into the next echelon of stardom as an athlete in America. You see the swarms of crowds around him at the Indy 500 day. You see the cameras on him at Charlotte. You see the time on Pat McAfee's talking about Kyle Larson and the double today. And it kind of transpawns even the Indy 500 and NASCAR a little bit. And we've been begging for years to have a NASCAR star be like that early 2000s where everyone in pop culture knows that name. Maybe they don't know exactly why, but they know, oh, that guy's a really good race car driver. And I feel like maybe slowly we might be seeing Kyle Larson to take that next step today. What do you think?
I not only agree with you, but I would even take it a step further and say that as far as the most popular driver in NASCAR right now, Chase Elliott, you may have a little bit more competition than you think. Obviously, I think, Chase Elliott's dad is obviously who his dad is, but with the way that Kyle Larson is making himself available by constantly racing, whether it's sprint cars, going to the Indy 500, I just think the best ability is availability. And, for better or worse, like him or hate him, you can't say that Chase Elliott really feels like he loves getting in the race car every week. He does it when he has to. I think that's one of those things where so much of Chase Elliott's off-track persona is, oh, I really like to get away from the racetrack and do different things. And then you've got Kyle Larson, on the other hand, who wants to be in a seat. That is where he is most comfortable. That is what he wants to do. And I think ultimately that really appeals to a fan, because I think a lot of the reason people become fans of a sport is because they wish that they could be doing what they are doing. And especially in NASCAR, I think there's, everybody kind of has that old man take of, oh man, if I just got behind the wheel one time just to see what would happen. And I think Kyle Larson just consistently getting in seats and racing is really making him popular. And his ability to just say yes and roll with the punches and to see what he can do and to constantly test himself. I think anytime you see an athlete that is willing to make himself uncomfortable in the way that Kyle Larson is, with a little bit more media coverage, I think you're 100% right. I think his star is only growing. It's only going upward. I mean, imagine if he wins either of these races today. I think it's you can't not cover it if you're ESPN, any major news outlet. So yeah, I think you're 100% right. His star is 100% on the rise.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll add on to that is that Kyle Larson, if he wins those races, but just if he's competitive, it raises the echelon for everyone. You see other names, but you haven't had that big star name since the Tony Stewarts, the Jeff Gordons. Denny Hamlin's kind of there, but it's still a very niche name. There's times where I'll be driving around my city ad and I'll see Kyle Larson bumper stickers and license plate covers. And the only other time you really see that is for Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, Jr., Tony Stewart. It's those legend names, Jimmy Johnson. So to see Kyle Larson like that, he is slowly but surely starting to edge his way into that next echelon of motorsport stars in America. And I'm very curious to see if he does this double again next year, like it's reported like that deal's for. Is it going to keep going? Because, let me tell you, today, watching the Indy 500, and I'm not alone, a lot of people were absolutely hooked on the 500. And obviously, this isn't our first 500, but this was our first 500 really just truly invested in the full thing with Kyle Larson. And to see that full crossover, I think it's a perfect storm for everyone, right?
100%. And I think that was the thing that what you can't really quantify today was how many people were watching the Indy 500, not because it's the Indy 500, but because Kyle Larson was running the Indy 500. I think there is some sort of notable difference. I don't know how it would be quantified, in the ratings or anything like that, but ultimately, the one thing we can look at is the merch sales for this. I mean, we're talking record number of merch sales as far as all of the crossover McLaren and Hendrick Motorsports merch. It just seemed like there was more. If there is such a thing as the Indy 500 being more popular or getting more interest, it was definitely felt that way this year, in large part because Kyle Larson was running.
100%. Let's go ahead and just transition real quick to the Indy 500, and let's kind of put a bow on this episode. Just an incredible day. That's the one saving grace of Memorial Day, was the Indy 500 day. We get delayed for 4 hours. We do end up getting to run the full 500 miles today at Indianapolis. You have Joseph Newgarden go back-to-back and win on just an absolute electric last lap, where him and Pat O'Ward have two battles back and forth there, and ultimately Newgarden gets him into turn 3. But just watching the last 30 laps or so, which was commercial-free by NBC, credit to them to have the awareness on the green flag run there. As a pure racing fan, when you go, I want just pure racing between great drivers who are just pushing it to the limit, those last 25 laps between O'Ward, Rossi, Newgarden, it was just everything you could want as a race car fan.
Everything from the on-track action to the commentary, shout out to Leigh Diffey, man. That was a masterclass at the end of this race of building drama, of building tension, and the call at the end there, a masterclass, an absolute chef's kiss. Someone in the Fox production truck needs to be taking notes, because my God, it was awesome. Like you said, there was a little something for everyone in that last, part of 30 laps of this race. And ultimately, of all of the things that kind of fell flat today, the finish of the Indy 500 was exactly what we were hoping for. Obviously, I think, selfishly, we were kind of hoping Kyle Larson would be around it. But ultimately, with Joseph Newgarden coming in and going back-to-back for the first time since, I think it was Elio Castroneves in 2001 and 2002. I mean, that's just an incredible feat. And the way that it was covered, like you said, commercial-free, the drama building, and then I think the thing that was really cool is not only watching Joseph Newgarden go in the stands and celebrate with everybody, but to show Pat O'Ward and to see the emotion raw like that right after the race, after losing that, the Indy 500 for the second time. It's just a masterclass, and everything we wanted and more. It just was only 33% of our weekend, regretfully.
You mentioned Pat O'Ward, and it just shows the viewer what really this means to the drivers, what the Indy 500 means. And that's the third time O'Ward's finished third or second. He had a really close run last year, especially. And you just see the heartbreak on him. One of the most popular drivers in IndyCar and one of the nicest guys in the garage, too. And just to see him come so close and just to have that raw emotion in front of everyone, just to show these drivers are human and this is what they build toward. And when they don't win, man, this just shows even the most casual viewer how much the Indy 500 truly means to these guys and to the grand scheme of motorsports overall. When you win, you're a legend forever. It's similar to the Daytona 500. You could argue even more, because the Indy 500, when you're watching the pageantry, the pre-race, just the whole spectacle, 350,000 people in the stands. When you think of racing in America, you think of Indianapolis. It is the home of racing. It's the capital of America.
100%. I think, the Indy 500 is to North American auto racing what the Kentucky Derby is to horse racing. You may not care about anything else that happens in that sport for the entire year, but if it's on, you're going to watch it. And that's just the tradition of it. That's, like you said, the pageantry, all of it. The Indy 500 just attracts a different crowd. And ultimately, it's races like this is where you have the opportunity to really elevate and to retain viewers and to get people to say, hey, you know what, I may check this out the next time it's on TV. And ultimately, if you aren't an IndyCar fan and you're not planning on watching any of the races and you saw today's finish, I think there's a strong chance you may give it another shot, just because it was so interesting and it was so well done towards the end of the race. I don't see how you couldn't be interested.
Yeah, I hope for the people that have just maybe opened the door a little bit to IndyCar and to watch the 500, they go, oh my goodness, I have discredited maybe what I've thought about IndyCar or what I previously thought the Indy 500 was. No, this is so much more than even what you expect when you turn it on. I will say this, and if you want to just go ahead and leave the call now, you can. But there was a race this morning as well. We did have the old country club Grand Prix down in Monaco, where about $100 million a seat just to watch some guy sip caviar while he watches the parade go by. Charles Leclerc did get the curse broken. The Monaco native finally goes and gets the monkey off his back, wins. And honestly, the most depressing part for me is that it should be a grand moment. And yes, there was a lot of celebration. It was very cool to see. But the moment just got watered down because for the first time in F1 history, as they qualified in the top 10, there was not a single pass in the top 10. Now, not only that, somebody on Twitter did the math, and there was in the 72 laps at Monaco, 5, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 passes on track. Meanwhile, there was 7 times a girlfriend was shown on TV. There was more wives shown than passing at Monaco. F1 fans, if you really think that was good racing, let me tell you, I've got oceanfront Nebraska that looks beautiful. You can go ahead and move out there and get a sunburn out there because that was absolute garbage today. And it's sad to see Monaco dying because it's history. It's an incredible scene, but it is just depressing watching F1 right now. I don't care if I don't know who's going to win or not. There's no racing. It's all just a billionaire yacht club.
Yes, Monaco has historically been that. I am not a staunch F1 fan. I am not one who consistently follows. But speaking of following, that seems to be all they like to do at Monaco is it's follow the leader. You qualify and, at least you're in for maybe a pass or something. But this was an absolute snooze fest. I even woke up to watch it because I thought, you know what? There's 3 crown jewel races for 3 of the major racing, sanctioning bodies in the world. I'm going to give F1 a chance today. And I quickly regretted it because, like you said, it's literally just a parade through Monaco. It feels like there's more focus on the things going on off the track and, the Ritz-Carlton yacht that people are paying, $10,000 to be on. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's a very cool place for a race, but ultimately, there still has to be a race. It can't just be a parade or a follow the leader. There has to be some sort of competition on the track because as checked out as the fans are when they're kind of hanging out on the yacht and doing whatever, if you're a racing fan and you looked at this honestly and you said, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go back to Monaco next year. I mean, take the rose-colored glasses off. You're simply lying to yourself.
F1 fans, it's okay to criticize your own sport. Trust me. NASCAR fans are way too critical about our own sport. We literally don't let the moment breathe. It's okay. You're not perfect. It's fine to say it was a boring race. Just because Max didn't win doesn't make it a good race, by the way.
No, Bob, you didn't understand. Max Verstappen didn't win this race. There's parity. We did it. We did it as a sport. Us F1 fans, we're ready. Put the tea on the fucking kettle. We did it. We did it, Bob. Sip tea. We nailed it.
And again, Monaco, look, I'm not going into this expecting greatness. I'm expecting the parade. But at least when you get the pit stop strategy, there's a little bit of something there. When you have that red flag on the first lap, I hate this rule in F1 where you can automatically change your tires and work on the car under a red flag. No other sport can you do that. No other motorsport series can you do that. But F1, you can change your tires and go, okay, we're going to run 71 more laps on the same tire, and there's not going to be another pit stop for this entire race. And it was just a joke to watch today. And as a motorsports fan, if you don't feel like F1 cares about anything but the racing, I don't know what to tell you, Ad, because could you imagine NASCAR with the short track package right now, them sitting there going, well, it's Martinsville. It's historic. It's fine. No, NASCAR is at least working day and night around the corner with Goodyear to fix the short track package. Meanwhile, F1 goes, it's Monaco. You're going to come and you're going to watch it. It's history.
Yep, they've taken a very Disney approach to this, to where they're like, look, this is our product. We've done this for years. You are still going to come and pay thousands upon thousands of dollars to experience it. Deal with it. And yeah, I'm at the point where you're not going to gain many new fans or have people understand why Monaco is this crown jewel race for them and why it is such a great spectacle without the racing aspect of it. I don't know. It just feels like if you're a racing, you're a touring racing series, you should probably focus a little bit more on your racing. And like you said, we give NASCAR a lot of crap, but at least when they have problems, they attempt to fix them. Mind you, sometimes we get the Roval as a result of them trying to fix their problems, but at least they're doing something, Bob.
And I saw hundreds of tweets about it, and maybe I'm just way too online, but for all those F1 fans this week that were slandering IndyCar, the Indy 500, and Kyle Larson, I hope you enjoyed what you watched on Sunday, because let me tell you, the Indy 500 kicked your ass, and it's very clear that F1's not going to get any better. So enjoy it. Congrats. Maybe when the regulations change in 2026, you'll have a good time. But here's my thing, Ad. If you have to convince somebody and yourself that it's good, it's probably not. But anyway, Drive to Survive will be nice in February. The one big thing here, Ad, I will say, was that it was weather all over today. And part of the reason I'm in a mood, and if you've made it this far, by the way, congratulations. This episode's gone on way too longer than we thought it would, but we're kind of venting at this point. And I'm kind of in a mood because it's been a long day of just getting abs. I feel like Kyle Larson with the weather so I'm in the Nashville, Tennessee area. There was a tornado warning-ish on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee this morning. So Monaco, woke up to watch it, was in the very small box on the very bottom corner of the screen. Couldn't listen to it, could barely see it. I'm not going to watch the Monaco Kids cast on Nickelodeon. I'm better than that. Well, then we go to IndyCar and it's delayed. Okay, whatever. The double's screwed. At least IndyCar was savable, but it puts you in a funk because the double's dead. But I go to watch the IndyCar pre-race when they finally get out, and they're covering a thunderstorm warning and hail in South Nashville. So I can't even watch the IndyCar pre-race. And then, lo and behold, we finally get NASCAR to run. Everything's going well. Kyle Larson is finally in the airspace in Charlotte, and the rain hits. That's okay. I'm gonna sit around. I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna be ready for tonight. I'm gonna watch the last 150 laps. No, we're canceling it early. It's late. It's Sunday night. Can you just tell me it's gonna be okay? This is therapy at this point. Nobody else is listening. Just tell me it's gonna be okay.
Bob, you went through a lot today. You basically went through the fans' version of 1,100 miles of hoping and dreaming and wanting so badly to just watch some racing. And Mother Nature really just screwed you. And, kind of screwed all of us. Of course, I'm from Southern California. It was 74 degrees and sunny today. No rain in sight. No tornadoes. Sorry to hear that. Sorry you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with. It's one of those things. I may get taxed out of the ass, but at least Mother Nature forgets about us enough to where we just get really good weather. So, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I will say this. I can complain too. I just wanted if I could have traded weather with you today, or in Indianapolis, or in Charlotte, I would have. I'm telling you, I would have. And I don't know what government official. Let's put the tinfoil hats on. I don't know what government official controls the weather, or who has the device that controls the weather. But you could have just done us a little bit more of a solid today. I mean, I'm just saying. You would have had my vote. That's all I'll say. If you would have maybe changed up the weather for us. Don't tell me it's not possible.
I would have went door to door for that candidate probably at this point. I mean, I'm barely hanging on by a thread now. It's after midnight now on Sunday night. And yeah, I literally I'm not even joking right now. I can hear it raining outside right now. I can hear it raining outside my door. It just started raining. Folks, you cannot make this up, okay? We are not even making up a bit right now. It is fucking raining outside my door right now. I am literally going to go screaming in my pillow tonight.
I'm so sorry.
I wish I could just take my microphone and take it outside right now so the people could hear this. It is literally raining hard enough I could hear it through the door.
Oh my gosh, Bob, your sleep is going to be rain delayed. This is going to be the best. You can't get away from a rain delay even when you're trying to sleep.
If it rains tomorrow for Memorial Day, I haven't even looked at the weather. I'm literally going to sit in the dark and just watch Indy highlights from like 2022 or something. I don't know. But folks, again, episode 84 of Breaking Balls. If you've somehow made it this far, congratulations. This is an even more off the rails one than usual, but look, fuck, we're down bad, okay? Adam's sleep deprived. I'm just depressed. we're just struggling for anything right now. So if you've made it this far, like, subscribe, share to your friends, go look at these morons. They're just upset. They're having a tough day. It could be worse. But Ad, how do you feeling right now?
I'm tired. My daughter's sick, so that's been fun. Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head, Bob. I think honestly, let's change the mood of the episode a little bit because we have experienced a good deal of growth on this channel in the past few weeks. A lot of new subscribers who are probably going to be seeing this, and I think I speak for Bob and I when we say thank you so much for the support. We love doing this. It's a way for us to keep in touch. We're two really good friends who just love to sit here and talk about racing, and the fact that anybody is sitting here listening to us, especially after tonight's performance, is mind-boggling.
I don't know, Ad. I don't know. If you're actually listening right now, go ahead and comment something right now and say, no, I made it this far. I'm still listening. I'm very curious to see how many people stayed with us on this one. But Ad, I'll let you finish this one off. Episode 84. It is literally raining harder and harder right now as I keep talking. Ad, get me out of here before my power goes out.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is your double, Bob. Good luck with the weather. I'm done with it.